Okay, let's keep on learning. It should be for Hatzalah, for Klal Yisrael, and the Shvuim, and the soldiers.
Amen.
Tav Nun Aleph, Hilchot Pesach. Okay, we're still finishing Hechsher Hagalas Kelim. So Chaf, Uran Chaf. I just want to point out, I know it's been a little while, but the handles of utensils, including knives, I know it was touched upon, it never needs more than Hagala. All utensils, you just have to do Hagala and you're fine. Of course, obviously things that are like a spit that it's used to be roasted on a grill or on a roast, that's something else that you need libun. But generally, normal knives that we have in the kitchen, utensils, all of it just needs Hagala. I'll just point out a couple of things to keep in mind because there's a few reasons. It has to do with Hetera Bala. It has to do with the handle. It's never really hot. It's never on the flame. It's just connected to the rest of it. Tata Gavar. It's the bottom part that's really stronger. V'chule. But let's just move on. Chaf. Tav Nun Aleph Chaf. Hashulchanot v'hativot shematzniim behem ochalim. Kol hashana regilim le'arot aleim Orach Chaim lefi shelifamim nishpach marak min hakadera letocham. So he says tables, countertops that we're used to, certain types of cabinets that you use all year. It's always used for cold, but these surfaces are surfaces where we often pour hot liquids that have chametz inside. Kanedalach, whatever, noodles, pasta, whatever it is, it's around areas that there's real chametz and there's real hot water getting poured around. So lifi shelif amim nishpach marak min hakadera letochan. So sometimes the liquids, the soups, whatever is hot with chametz and it splashes or it spills and it gets onto the tabletop. So that's why we have to. That's why the custom is to kosher them. Now, the Shulchan Aruch, we're going to see again, he holds you go after rov tashmisho. Shulchan Aruch holds you only have to kosher things based on the way they're normally used. Countertops are not normally used with hot. According to him, according to Shulchan Aruch, Minhag Sfardim, all you have to do is just wash it, keep it clean, and you're good to go, and you can use this for Pesach. But he says as a chumrah, it's the Ramah also has the chumrah that you even go after not rov tashmisho, but the Ramah is going to takes it a little bit more seriously because that's like their rule, the psak. If you go after not rov tashmisho, at least lechatchila. So the custom is even for Svardim to clean it and to pour on it hot water or to cover it because there is sometimes hot splashes. The Mishnah Berurah points out others who say that sometimes people put hot challah, hot whatever, barekas, straight from the oven, straight to their countertops. And since they do that sometimes, you have something dry, being really hot, being placed on the countertops, and then it needs actually libun or hagala with an iron or some kind of hot metal, burning hot metal stone on the countertop as well. So you can ask all kinds of questions to Tagvar. There's a lot of issues that go into it, but Lamaisa, there are two basic by Sfardim. It's just you cover it, or you just clean it with hot water. Some are makel, just not even to, but that's the custom. And by Ashkenazim, two main customs: either they do just regular pouring of burning hot water, or many, they actually cover it up completely. There are a few people who do both. All the poskim say that's definitely not necessary, even according to the minhag. So, according to Ashkenazim, there are two basic opinions again. Some say no, you need to cover it up. It was rechoshesh for any time you put hot challah or anything hot, that's yavesh. And some, if it's like a granite surface, that's stone or wood, that's not too pitted or has crevices, that's a whole other issue. So that's why another reason why many also just cover it up completely. Okay. Fine. Let's go on. But those are the two basic psakim we're going to get from, depends who you ask among the Ashkenazim. It depends also, some homes, hot bread sometimes ends up on the counter, and some homes it never does, but okay. Kaf Aleph. Chaviyot shel cheres shenatnu behem shechar seorim. Now, barrels of a clay, cheres, ceramics, that has beer. Mutar behagala o be'iroi shlosha yamim. So the Shulchan Aruch writes, you can either do hagala, basically, right, it means you put it into another pot, or you pour boiling hot water in the barrel itself, overflowing with boiling hot water, and then you put in another hot stone that keeps it even more boiling as it overflows. Oh, be'iroi shlosha yamim, or you just, it's just lukewarm, cold water, you fill it up to the very top so it's overflowing, you leave it there for 24 hours, spill it, refill it up, 24 hours, and then spill it, and then a third time you let it go with the water. Here, because there's no heat, so that's why it's okay with hagala, or just iroi shlosha yamim. That's why that's okay. The Shach points out that we're only makel by this iroi, by this beer, because it's chametz, not by if it's an isur that God's balua of kavash kamavushal, so that we wouldn't be makel. It's only because it's a kula by chametz. It's heterabala. Okay. Mishnah Berurah points out if it's wood, you have to sand it down because of the crevices. Okay. But in general, the custom is not to use any beer barrels whatsoever, and then you avoid the issue. So, Lamaisa, we don't use the vats that are used for beer are not used for kosher or Pesach. But he does point out, especially if it's metal, you can use it. He does say you could use it if you do a hagala with it. If it's smooth metal and you do hagala with it, first you boil it to make sure there's no even smell whatsoever from whiskey or from beer. So even the smell is completely gone, and then you can do hagala afterwards. So that is, let's keep reading the hagala. We're going to see, Mishnah Berurah does say that is okay.
Why is this different than any regular kli that's used for coal?
Well, here, because you're doing kavush kamavusha. It's there for more than 24 hours. The hagala, right, if it was just a regular cup that you drink from with cold, even Ashkenazim would say you just have to, we're going to get to cups in a second. People wash them with hot water, so there's reason to be, why some are machmer. Generally we are machmer, but let's keep reading. V'hagala sechavios yasa b'derech zeh. Yilabein avanim yisimem behem, that's what I just explained. How do you do hagala on these big barrels? You pour boiling hot water, but yilabein ha'avanim yisimem behem. So first you pour boiling, what's it called? Red hot coals, or stones inside. V'areh alehem rotchim mikli rishon. And then you do boiling hot water, but it's from a kli rishon. But the reason why it gets to a level of hagala is because of those stones in there. And then of course you have to shake it to make sure it gets into the crevices, gets all over. Over the Evid, imratnu behem yain o dvash below hagala, rak shedichan heter tchila mutar lishtat mimenu bepesach. And even the Ramah says, but the Evid, if you cleaned it out completely, and even though they were vats used for beer or whiskey, but if you clean them out completely, and then you put in some wine or dvash or a liquid inside afterwards, again, we hold either not to use it at all, generally speaking, or if it's smooth, you can cook out any smell and then use it. But here he says, but the Evid, you can use it, drink from it if it was if it was already used and liquid was put in there.
So the mavushal is only
yeah, it's only lechatchila. Well, it would be worse. It's not just lechatchila. It also depends if you now cook with it. If you were to have a vat for beer, just to clarify, if you had a vat for whiskey or beer, and you have kavash kamavushal, and then you cook with it a liquid on Pesach, nidmeli for sure asa. But here it's b'di'evid, now you put a cold liquid in there, and then that's when it's okay b'di'evid. Okay. Okay. Anyways, these cases don't usually come up. Kav beis. Kol kelim. All dishes. Afilu shel cheres. It doesn't matter, even if it's clay, ceramic, whatever, shenishtam, glass, shenishtamish behem chametz betzonin. So this is we're going to start off with the Pesach of the Shulchan Aruch. So he says anything that is used with cold, even if it's used with chametz, but it's always used with cold, or usually used with cold. Mutar lishtamish behen matzah afilu b'chamin. Now you're allowed to use it on Pesach, even with hot chametz, because it's 100%, the kli never became iser. It was always used with cold, or usually used with cold according to the Shulchan Aruch, and therefore, now it's 100% mutter to use in any way on Pesach. However, the exception for the Shulchan Aruch is chutz mi beit seor u beit charoset. Except for a place where you're having intense beit seor, the fermenting process, kli, that's used where you put in the fermenting, the challah, the dough to rise, or where there's vinegar sitting there, sha'af al pi. Right, so then it has extra strength that gets balua into the walls. Sha'af al pi shel nishtameh ben chametz ela b'tzonin. And even though you use it, generally for tzonin, for chametz during the year, asur lishtamish behen matzah b'chamin. Wait a minute. What did I read? Sha'af, we're talking about here the beit seor, the chametz vessel for fermenting. So then you're not allowed to use it. Asur lishtamish behen matzah b'chamin. You can't use it for cold, for hot matzah for sure. It's asur b'di'evet. Aval b'tzonin lahaniach behem matzah afuya mutar. Aval asur lalush behen. So if you have this kneading bowl where it sits and it ferments, or a plate or a board where you let it ferment on, so then to put something cold on there for a few minutes is okay, but you can't cook in it and you can't now knead in it, because when you're kneading in it, you're now, the fermenting process with your matzah dough on Pesach is also going to pull out from the walls of this beit seor, of this fermenting kli. The kol zeh below hagala. Now this is if you don't do hagala. About ayedei, right? Okay. So this is if you don't do any hagala with these beit seor. About ayedei hagala. If you do hagala with this, because it's, again, hagala is going to work over here because we're talking about cold. So even though it's a fermenting, it doesn't have to be kavash kamavushal. It's just used for fermenting. It doesn't have to be 24 hours. Now, but hagala will work. Afilu beit seor v'charosim mutarim meyom shel cheres. So hagala works for all material except for cheres, for this fermenting dish. Like if it's a smooth metal, hagala will work, and now you can even cook with it chametz, matzah. Aval l'shel cheres lo mahane hagala. But if it's cheres, it doesn't help to do hagala, because we know by cheres in general we say it's boleya and it doesn't come out. The only time we know by cheres it does come out is if you put it in super intense heat. Remember, if you put it into a furnace like where you made it, or you fill it up with super hot coals. Again, we don't allow it because we assume it's going to break. Okay, let's go on. So even if even though you just used the fermenting ceramic kli for cold, but you used it for fermenting. So therefore it's asa. Even though the fermenting was done when it was cold. So you're not allowed to use this cheres, even if you do hagala, because it's fermenting, it's for fermenting. You can't even put on it in cold matzah. Again, if you put some cold matzah there, but yavid, you can take it off and use it, unless you were kneading into it.
You have the word, afilu?
What?
Afilu b'tzonin?
Yeah. L'chatchila, you can't use it. You have to put it away and not use it. So if it was put in there by mistake. China. So someone mentioned about China. So China is, So it depends if it's used for hot and cold, if it's usually used for hot and cold. It's generally, so generally for China, we assume we use it for hot when we eat. And therefore for China, it's a real problem. I'm not going to get into it all, but some poskim are makel after 12 months of not using China if it's going to be a hefsid meruba, and otherwise you have to throw it away. But,
just most editions of the Mishabura have Elabit something. And the Mishabura says Yesh Garsim Afiru.
Okay. Okay. V'ha'idna, I have a fila b'tzanim. Okay. V'ha'idna nagu alma deloli ishtamushi v'fischa demani depachre hatike perush klicheres yishenim. And bottom line, the minhag is nobody uses klicheres on from all year. Any of your ceramic dishes, nobody uses them. Period. Okay. Let's go on. But let's see something. I think we got it. Yeah. So the Mishnah Berurah points out the only time you can use, again, we don't really do this, but the only time you can use a bowl is if it's smooth metal that was used for fermenting, for chametz. The only way to use it is if you burn it, basically, libun. But we don't do that. We just put it away. Okay. Let's read V'tanur. V'tanur in the Rama, in the parentheses, Shal Beit HaChoref, Dino Kekli Cheres V'asur Lasum Shum Davar Al HaTanur BePesach. So now here, a tanur also is a problem. They used to have a tanur to warm themselves in the house, but the tanur was also used to put the bread on the outside of it. And it has a din of a kli cheres, and there's no way to use it to put food on it. You can use it to heat up your house, but there's no way to use it for matzah or kosher food on Pesach, because there's really no way to kasher it. You're putting it on the outside of the kli cheres, and it's a big metal. It's a big cheres pot, and that's it. You put bread right onto it, and there's no way really to kasher it. It's dry, hot bread. Okay, and if you put matzah directly on it by mistake, it's aser kedei klipa at least, depending on the situation. But if it's any time you put, if the food was put on the tanur in a pot, and you have nothing but the pot actually touching the tanur, so we learned that from the fire, the grates, it doesn't transfer chametz through the grates to the kli, to the food inside. So b'di evid, if somebody put a kli on there and there was food inside, it'd be mutter b'di evid. Okay. Kaf gimel. Klei cheres hamitzupin behituch zechuchi dinam kechli cheres. Now, any time you have a kli cheres, again, this is similar to perhaps China or some of the dishes we have, but anytime you have a kli cheres, pottery, ceramics, and it has a layer of glass around it, it still has the din of kli cheres. What? A glaze. Because we're afraid that the chametz balua got through the glass and got into the kli cheres. And now there's no way to ever get it out of the kli cheres. Yesh mekomot shenagul shelo lishtamesh b'kli cheres glizart afilu chadashim glaze. Well, glaze are glazed. Okay, fine, glazed. So some say not to use any kli cheres that's glazed, even brand new. And one should not be machmir unless that's the minhag in that place. The reason in those days, because sometimes when they would glaze the ceramics, the people making it would have chametz on their hand or in some of their ingredients that went into the glass glaze. If you ever see a glass blower, sometimes the thing that he's, what he's eating or smoking can have a little bit of an effect on what's getting blown. But anyways, so here they would this is obviously, we're not worried about this nowadays, but unless you find out you need to be. But okay. So obviously any new dishes, it's not going to be a problem of chametz. Kaf Dalid. Kli eitz hamitzupim basamanim shekorim barnis dinam kechli cheres. The same concept. If you have a type of wood that's made with some kind of coating of some kind of spices, it also has a din kli cheres because they were also afraid of stuff getting chametz getting mixed in with these spices. V'yesh mekomot shemachmirim shelo lishtamish bekelim tzevuim. Some say not even to use any kind of kli that has any kind of paint or color in it, any kind of a dye. Afilohim chadashim, even if they're brand new, for the same reason. V'chen hamechupim bivdil, and anything that's covered with some kind of a nickel or a metal. Ve'ein lachmir v'zerak l'mukom shenagla iser. And nowadays we're not worried about it. Again, because it depends how well it's coated, if it's stuff gets stuck inside or the ingredients, or in between the two layers. But anyways, generally the minhag is not to worry about this when you're buying new dishes. Okay, kafe. Kol klei shtia, any drinking utensil. Bein slochit, bein kosot, mutarim b'shtifa. Bein slochit, so any kind of pitchers, cups, whatever you want to use for drinking, all you have to do is just rinse it off. Why? Bein shem slochit, bein shehem shel eitz, bein shem shel matechet, bein shem shel cheres. Doesn't matter if it's glass, it could be wood, it could be metal, it could be ceramics. Okay. Because these are generally used only with cold liquids. It could be that sometimes a person will dip or put in hot bread, or it can fall in there, or whatever. Since Shulchan Aruch says you go after rov tashmishan, the way they're normally used only for cold. Again, we're talking about cups that are normally used for cold. Obviously, we have certain glasses and mugs that are used specifically for hot coffee, tea, or etc. So then, that's a different category. We're talking about cups and dishes that are generally used for cold. So then, sagi b'shtifa, all you have to do is just wash them. Shalhalchu b'chol kli ela archa rov tashmisho. Because we go after the way they're normally used. If it's normally used with cold, even though sometimes it's used with hot, you only have to you treat it as we look at it as if it's only used for cold, and cold can just be cleaned with cold water. Okay. Haga mio. Yesh machmirim umatzrichim hagala v'chen nogin. The minhag is all dishes need to have hagala, and otherwise we don't. We get new ones for Pesach.
So, but if it's a kli cheres, the shtia, the Ramah is saying you could be mager.
You could be.
Such a kli cheres for shtia, he's saying you can do hagala.
Yes, you can do hagala on coffee mugs, and you can do. Here he writes, you can even do, the Mishnah Berurah says, you can even do, here the Mishnah Berurah says, according to Minhag Ashkenaz, you're allowed to do the milei ve'irei 3 times as well. For rov tashmisha with cold, here he writes, you're allowed to just do 3 times with the cold water. Fill it up 3 times. Okay. Kavav. Klei zechuchit. Glass. Filu machnisa nekiyum. Even if you use it for a long term. In other words, way more than enough time needed for kavash kamavushal. Afilu mishtamesh ben v'chamin. Even if you use it with hot liquids or anything hot. Ein tzrichim shum hechsher. You don't have to do any kind of hechsher. She'enam bolim u'shtifa be'alma sagi lehu. They're smooth. Anything hard and smooth. We have it comes from the Gemara. If it's hard and smooth, they're not boleya, and therefore all you have to do is wash it with cold water, even though you use it, even Avad Yosef says even for Pyrex. Anything for glass, you don't have to kasher it. You just have to make sure it's completely clean. Vizel. Okay. Okay, Haga. This is the Ramah, right? Minhag Ashkenaz. V'yesh machmirin v'omim the klei zechut afil hagala ma'ilihu. Actually, the opposite. It's not even enough to do hagala. There's nothing you can do about it. V'chen minhag b'Ashkenaz u'medinot elu, and that's our minhag among Ashkenazim, is that we don't even allow to do Hagala, because we know that glass comes from sand, and so the Ashkenazim, we consider them to be similar to Kli Cheres. And Kli Cheres, even if whatever gets inside, there's no way to take it out, except we mentioned in really intense heat, inside and outside, or wherever it gets touched. Okay. So that's the minhag. You go after, and so the minhag by Ashkenazim is restrict by glass, and you go after afilu mi'ut tashmisha. Even if it's normally used with cold, but sometimes it's used for hot or machmer. And I believe the minhag in general is to treat, since we wash them in the same sinks with chametz, we wash them in the same dishwashers. I believe that's the minhag in most, if not all, Ashkenazi communities, to treat all dishes, including as if it's sometimes gets hot. V'chen kli kesef sheish betochen hitov zechuchit shekorin gishmeltzt ein lahagila. Even if you have silver, but it's coated in glass, now it has a din of cheres l'chomra. Aval mi bachutz eino mazik. Now, if there's only glass on the inside, you can clean the outside, but whatever. Now, that's the minhag, and the Mishnah Berurah says, but b'di'evid, we can go by rov tashmisho b'di'evid like the Shulchan Aruch. If it was clean, but it was mistakenly used, then we can use it. And he says, if it's rov tashmisho b'chamin, or it's been in there for 24 hours, afilu b'di'evid, there's nothing you can do. Unless you do Hagala and Iroi 3 times. Okay. Alright. Again, now doesn't apply nowadays, but he says...
What? 3 times, you said?
What was that? Iroi 3 times. Milui ve'iroi is 3 times. That was in Kuf Nun Hey in the Mishnah Berurah. It says in the next... Also, he says in places where there is no glass and there's a shortage and you have no choice, you could be mekel as well. Again, we don't usually live in those times in most scenarios. Okay, Kav Zayin. Let's just, should we stop? Finished? Let's just finish Kav, what? Finished? We'll just finish Kav Zayin. Shipud yashan shetzalubo ofot b'Pesach mutarin. Now, spits that you use during the whole year, you use them for birds. All you do with them is it's right. We call it chametz dik because we use it for all year, but it's never used for chametz. It's only a spit that's a kli. It's only used for meat, so it's 100% mutar. Afal pishumi kodem tzalubo basar maluach mimelach shalo nivdak. In those days, I don't think this applies so much nowadays, but in those days, apparently their salt used to get mixed in a little bit with breadcrumbs somehow. So since they had that issue, there was always a worry, and you were supposed to use new salt and everything. Nowadays, I don't think that's such a worry. Again, it depends how you run your kitchen. But okay. So anyways, but it could. Sometimes people pinch pieces of salt from the containers. So anyways, bottom line, the salt wasn't checked, and you use it to salt the meat. Again, when you're salting meat, I don't think there's a chashash for chametz. But anyways, in those days, there was always a chashash that there was some chametz, some breadcrumbs mixed in that salt. Doesn't matter. We don't have to worry about it. Okay?
Nevertheless, the minhag is generally to always open a new container.
Okay, so let's read. So alpha p shemikot. So even though it was already, so you don't have to worry about this spit was only used for kosher meat, even though it maybe had some breadcrumbs in the salt that was used with the meat. Not a problem, l'maisa. Haga, miu ein lahatirak b'di'evid. This is only b'di'evid we're mekel lechatchila. You definitely are supposed to get brand new salt and not worry about it, so then we don't have to worry about problems. Okay. Now, let's go on. Ufchein b'habraziot shechaviot shel yain noagim lahadichan, and spouts that was used for wine or faucets, whatever. So or machmer to make sure they're completely clean. Sometimes people used to touch it and get chametz stuck to them.